Hey YouTube, it's Chess Teacher Joe again. It's been a while since I've made a video. And anyway, I'm just going to talk about the French defense and how to play against it. And I may make maybe 2 or 3 videos on the French defense and a single system against it, because obviously there's more than one way to play against it, but I'm going to advocate the advanced variation. And it's not any better than knight c3 or knight to d2 or those variations, but it's the one I like and the one that I'm going to teach you because I like it. Anyway, e4, e6, d4, d5, e5. This is your, I guess, starting position in the advanced French. And white spends one move establishing a bit of a space advantage. But because of that, black is allowed at least a small initiative for the time being with a counterattack on the d4 pawn, which comes in the form of the move c5. And other moves for black are indeed possible, but they're not as good because they're not actively pursuing that plan. Although b6 is somewhat playable, it's not as testing as c5. So c5 is by far the most common move you're going to see here. And white should play c3 to just defend it. There's 2 main moves here, but the most common one is knight to c6. Queen to b6 is a sideline that I'll cover later. Knight to c6, very logical build-up and pressure on the d4 point, and white plays knight to f3, which just defends it. Now, here, it's possible to play a knight on g to e7. It's quite playable, but the most common move is queen to b6, which continues to put the pressure on d4. And now there's 3 common moves here. a3 perhaps being maybe the most common, followed by bishop to e2, and then bishop to d3, which is a gambit called the Milner-Berry. In my opinion, that gambit is probably unsound, but for a blitz game or even tournament-length games between people below master level, it's perfectly fine. Go ahead. But I'm studying this move right now. This is the one I'm going to cover because this video is not going to be a completely... I'm not going to cover every variation because it would be like 10 videos that are 10 minutes long. I don't have that much time. Basically, this is just going to give you a little repertoire against the French. Now, on a little bench in front of me, I have the latest copy of Modern Chess Openings, which is a decent book that kind of covers everything in a little bit of detail. So I'm going to read down the line. Now, I remember some of this, but just to double check. After a3, it looks like black has 2 common moves. First one being c4, and the second one being bishop to d7. Well, let's cover c4 first. What c4 does is, first of all, it kind of shows us that black is, to some extent, giving up on this attack on d4. Saying, okay, that attack is not what I'm going to be going for anymore, but he's establishing good control over the square b3. Now, is that going to, win or lose us the game? Probably not, but it's good that we understand what black is doing. Now, knight on b to d2. And this is a reasonable move, guarding the b3 square. The one maybe minor drawback is that it blocks in the bishop, but this bishop has a very good job of defending the pawn right now. So this bishop wasn't going to move anyway, so blocking it in, it doesn't really matter. Now, I do have this line memorized, but I'm still looking at the book just to make sure I don't screw it up. Knight to a5. Alright, he's going for b3. That's kind of self-explanatory there. And he might jump in there. He might give you some problems. You never know, right? Bishop to e2. Where else is it going to develop to? We can castle next move if we want. But remember that when you're in a closed position, castling early isn't quite as important because the center is not about to rip open. And you can be okay in there for a while. Bishop to d7. Alright, looks like at some point this bishop may come down along this diagonal to help black control the queenside squares. And notice that black is trying to generate, some type of active play on the side of the board which his pawns are facing. That's kind of a general rule of thumb to attack on the side of the board that your pawns are facing. So you're going to see both sides here following that general rule, although sometimes it's not always the case, but most of the time it is. So anyway, bishop to d7, castles, and black castle. Sorry, I'm on my tiptoes here. And if you're an amateur, at first it looks like black's king is a little open, and it technically is, but there is no way that white is ever going to somehow jump over this pawn chain and go attack black. It's an impossibility right now. So black is certainly not scared for his king. Rook to b1. And this move, gives the pawn a little extra defense, so maybe this bishop may come out later. And we might play b4 at some point, maybe to open lines at the king, but that's sort of like an idea that's up in the air right now. Knight to b3. Knight takes b3. And now kind of a cool move. Bishop to a4, pinning the piece, so not recapturing immediately. And in the French defense, the light squared bishop is normally what's called the bad bishop, because it's blocked in by the pawns. The bishop on b3 would still technically be bad, but it would be a very active bad bishop, and that's probably a good thing to have. So rather than just taking back with the pawn or the queen, black pins the knight and activates his bishop by doing so. After bishop a4, bishop to e3, and this is certainly not bad. I may consider bishop to g5 just as a different option, but it's not listed in MCO, and this is probably not a bad move, okay? Especially at the class player, like I'm a class A player level, it's not going to decide the game. But anyway, bishop to e3, and now bishop takes b3. So we certainly have to move the queen here, don't we? And queen to c1 is the last move that MCO has on this page, so I gotta flip the page and look under this little note here. Anyway, it says a5. Looks like black is trying to anchor that piece in pretty nicely. And it says that the position is relatively even here, although personally I kind of like, I guess to some extent, white's prospects a little more, because this side of the board seems to have really taken care of itself. Okay, black has a nicely placed bishop, but I don't see how black is going to come through breaking down the queen side really in a really meaningful way. Okay, there's not going to be a pawn break. This pawn's going to have this pawn coming here to break, it's going to take a long time. White can do something pretty active just by going back and letting this f-pawn go forward, and then he's attacking on the line. And of course, black will have a way to counteract that plan, but it looks like a fun position to play. Now, I don't claim to be an expert, and I'm not going to say that I'm infallible, but it looks like that's a decent way to do things. And in fact, the line goes knight d2, a4, f4, and knight e7. You can see white's plan materializing rather quickly. The knight right here blocks this square for a moment, but since the position is closed, both sides will have a lot of time to maneuver for their pawn breaks and stuff. So white, can, I don't know, I'm just going to be creative. You can go like here, and then here, and then here, and here, and then here, and then you get the picture that because the center is closed, white can take a lot of time to start building up for a possible breakthrough. And black, of course, will have plenty of moves to try to defend it or get a counterattack going. But the one reason that me, on I guess a little bit of a hunch, in fact, the reason I like white's position a little better is because, as I said, this side of the board is taking care of itself a little more than, say, the king side. There's more stuff that could happen on the king side, and since the white pawns are pointing that way, it's possible for white maybe to generate some more active play there. Now, if you are like a master or a grandmaster watching this video, and I'm completely friggin' wrong, write me a comment and tell me exactly why. You don't need to call me an idiot, but if you want to, go right ahead. But just explain why, because I mean, I'm an A player. I'm pretty good, but I got a lot to learn, so go ahead and teach me. Alright, we'll do a little part 2. And hopefully you guys will learn something.